Oh, welcome and thank you for joining me here on this middle of November afternoon here. And we're going to get right to it. How much snow are you likely to see this winter? Now, this forecast is going to talk about the main driver of the winter seasonal forecast, that is La Nina, and how that is expected to play out and some of the risks that we are seeing in what could change the forecast. We're also going to talk about some possibilities of some extreme cold coming early and fast this winter, as soon as after Thanksgiving and right on into Christmas. And who could see a lot more snow than what we've seen over recent winters, and who may unfortunately miss out once again on lots of snow this winter. So I've been spending the last few weeks preparing this forecast, taking a close look at the various climate indices and analogs and everything that goes into a big forecast. And I'm going to present it to you now in kind of more of a lecture style without all of the fluff. You don't need to see videos of snowstorms and dramatic music. We're just going to talk facts here. So I appreciate you joining me on this afternoon, and let's get right to it as I share my screen with you here. Let's take a look at this PowerPoint, and I'm going to blow it up so that you all can follow along. The winter snowfall forecast, and we'll talk about the climate drivers here first. Lots of acronyms. I'm going to explain those to you, but La Nina is going to be in effect here through the winter season. It will dominate the weather. There are signs later in the winter towards the spring, maybe the La Nina fades, and maybe some of the other drivers of climate will take center stage. We're going to talk about some of those climate risks in the video, such as the negative PDO, but more so the negative QBO, which is the quasi-biennial oscillation. I'll talk about what that means, and the threat for sudden stratospheric warming events. That is not a household term, but something that has come up more recently. Basically, disruptions in the stratosphere that allow much colder air to drop down suddenly into the United States and Northern Europe. We saw something like that a couple winters ago, actually at the end of 2021, beginning of 2022, that caused a lot of issues with sudden cooling and power outages, places like the Carolinas and Virginia right before Christmas time at an untimely time. And one factor that could be a big wild card here will be the fact that water temperatures just off the east coast of the United States and Canada are running on the cold side. And that is different than what we've seen in previous winters and may come into play as far as where that rain snow line sets up, especially for you folks in New England, including Connecticut, Eastern Long Island, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. We're going to talk about how that could tweak the snow forecast in your favor as well. Without further ado, here's a look at the indices. This is from World Climate Service. And here's the forecast for La Nina. Now, the blue numbers and negative numbers indicate colder than average temperatures in the middle of the equatorial Pacific, south of Hawaii. And the negatives indicate La Nina. So we're expected to continue the La Nina here in December and January, and most likely through February as well, although the peak of it is likely coming in the next 30 to 60 days. After that, the numbers do start to climb. And most of our models are actually showing that we go into a positive, maybe not an El Nino, but at least a more neutral phase by March, if not March, by April. Now, there's some risk that could happen sooner, perhaps as soon as the second half of February. And if that's the case, then La Nina no longer has a stronghold on our forecast. We have to look at other climate drivers. And that transition, the faster it happens, could lead to more extremes in the weather as well. In particular, severe weather in the South. That could be an issue as we get more into February and March. But for the face of this video, we're going to, or for the crux of this video at least, we're going to talk about the threat of snow and also ice. The probability, though, that we go into an El Nino stays extremely low December and January. Now, in February, the European model shows us getting more neutral. In fact, a 2 in 3 chance of that happening in the month of February. The Canadian model says there's a 3 in 4 chance that we go above zero. So La Nina is already done by the time we get to February, according to the European and the Canadian model. And the Bureau of Meteorology in Australia says it's about a 50-50 chance. Some of the other models are going to take a little bit longer, but we don't just like to look at the index number, which is a mean of so many possible chances of so many different ensemble members or simulations, but I like to look at the probability because that can be a more telling number. And it's a pretty good chance that La Nina is going on in December, and I would say a pretty decent chance in January. But in February, that's when the chaos could certainly ensue as we start to see a big disagreement in how probable it is we actually are still in a La Nina. So something to keep in mind there. And the skill here is pretty good when we're talking about a 3-month forecast. If this were a 6-month forecast, say we're trying to predict what's going to happen, say next May or June, that would be obviously we would have a lot more uncertainty, but we're talking 3 months away. So that is a pretty good amount of disagreement that soon. So during a La Nina forecast, typically what we see is the jet stream shifts northward. I've seen videos out there that talk about it going south. That is not the case. This typically means we get more clipper type systems. It's colder in the northern United States. The Pacific Northwest gets a lot more storms. We get atmospheric rivers that are aimed at Oregon and Idaho and Washington, Northern California. We get lots of snow up there in the Northwest and the Northern Rockies, and it's just cold across the northern United States. These storms continue on into the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, the prairies of Canada, southern portions of Canada, including Ontario, Quebec. We get more storms because the jet's farther north. If it were farther south, like it were in El Nino, then it would be cold and dry. And those storms would be aimed at California and the southern U.S. We get more severe weather, but this shifts the jet stream farther north. Now, if La Nina does come to an end or transitions or tails off in February, then the jet stream is going to shift back to the south, or it may take more dips. And that could mean more erratic weather. And then we look at other climate drivers at that point. But overall, at least December and January, this should be the framework for what should be relatively quieter storm track in the southern U.S., relatively milder weather down there. And in the northern United States, a lot more active weather. And that does include the Northeast as well, but we do have some question marks there. The Great Lakes, we should definitely see more lake effect, more snow. Chicago, we may finally get a decent winter here. It's been a while for sure. And certainly places like Minneapolis, the Pacific Northwest, even maybe Denver and Casper, Wyoming could have a pretty decent amount of snow. Alaska, we could see decent amounts of snow as well during this La Nina, like we saw a couple of winters ago as well. Moving along here, and let me click on my screen. You can see the PDO. This is the Pacific Decadal Oscillation. This is a naturally occurring shifting, which has been negative for a while. That's when it's warmer in the Western Pacific, cooler in the Eastern Pacific. You can kind of see how much warmer it is closer to Japan than it is, say, west of Washington and Oregon. This kind of goes in tandem with that La Nina. This changes a lot less frequently, though. It takes decades to change. But we actually had a record low PDO back in July. It got all the way down to -4, but it's come back up to -2 and continues to come up some. But we haven't had we have not had a positive PDO at least over the last 7 or 8 years, and I don't think we will this winter. So what this could mean is, it meant we saw fewer typhoons over the Western Pacific earlier on in the summer. And it will stay negative, and it shouldn't change a whole lot this winter. But what it typically does when it's negative means it stays active in the Northwest. It's dry in the Southwest. It's wet across the northern United States. And we may see relatively dry weather across the South, but there are some exceptions, including the Ohio and Tennessee valleys where it could be wetter. And how cold it gets could be a big battleground as far as, do we see lots of rain in these areas, or do we get lots of snow in the Ohio Valley? We haven't seen that in a while. We saw more snow last year in the Ohio Valley than it's been in a while, but we did not get quite back to normal. Just a couple of disruptive storms, especially in January. Now, the QBO, this is the quasi-biennial oscillation. This is something that actually occurs over the equator, over the stratosphere, about almost 60,000 feet up, 50 to 60,000 feet up. A negative QBO is when easterlies take over. And this could have actually impacted our tropical season and maybe the reason we didn't see as many storms survive that African wave train back in August and September. We saw some, but not a lot. It is expected to be negative, meaning we are going to see disruptions that reach the troposphere and also could lead to stratospheric warming suddenly. And what this means is we could see a lot colder conditions in the eastern U.S. and in northern Europe as we get pieces of the polar vortex that come down more suddenly. We actually saw one of those already going back to about the 9th or 10th of November. At least that's when it hit. Actually probably happened a little bit sooner, and that's quite early. In fact, we haven't seen one in November over the last I believe, 80 years, going back to the middle 60s. So a very rare event has already happened, and there's a possibility down the road we could see that happen again. Now, these numbers stay negative through the winter, meaning the likelihood of more of these disruptions is certainly possible, and that will be something to watch. Last winter, that number was positive. This winter, it's expected to be negative. So quite a difference in that we're seeing pieces here of this alternating wind regime that's in just a more disruptive phase where it disturbs what's going on above the stratosphere over the Arctic Circle. So the impacts we see here with the negative QBO is that it weakens the polar vortex. And when the polar vortex is weaker, that means it's, first of all, it's less stable. It's more likely to break down and drop disturbances down and suddenly warm the stratosphere, which leads to much colder air coming down from Canada, from the Arctic Circle, and lead to more disruptions of colder air. And these could start happening fairly soon. We already saw a piece of that happen last week. We could see it again in the month of December, maybe into January. This doesn't necessarily guarantee more snow, but anytime we have colder air, you can have more snow, but we need to have a source of moisture to line up with that. I would say at the very least, we're going to have more lake effect snow, but it could also get too cold to snow as the air mass could get too dry. What this also means is we typically have a colder than average season overall over the eastern United States and Europe, as long as that QBO stays negative. And we typically have above average snowfall and heavier amounts of snow just because there's more cold air available. But that's not a guarantee. If it's so cold and the lakes freeze up, then we don't get as much lake effect snow by February. With the fact that we're living in a warming world right now, that's becoming less and less likely to happen. That doesn't mean it can't happen. And there's also a tendency for higher pressure over Western Canada and the northern US and lower pressure to form over the southern and eastern parts of the US, meaning we could see low pressure spinning up off the East Coast. And if the waters of the ocean turn cooler and cooler, that means the more likelihood we see an East Coast storm and more snow coming to parts of the Northeast. And it's been a minute before that's happened, since that's happened. And you can see here from the World Climate Service, the European initialized just a couple of days ago shows a big dip in that zonal mean flow, meaning we are quite possibly looking at right around or just before Thanksgiving, stratospheric SSW, sudden stratospheric warming event. And what that will probably relate to is that it's not going to be immediately brutally cold on Thanksgiving. It takes time for this vortex to get disturbed and come down. But as we head into December, I would say 1 to 2 weeks after, there's a decent chance that things start getting colder. And maybe the middle of December is when we see something like this happen. And if you look at the ensembles, there are some that are quite a bit lower in here as well. So there's some disagreement on how strong this is or when it occurs, but we're looking at something pretty rare and something that hasn't happened in over about 80 years. So we could be off to a flying start with this winter, basically is what this chart is showing us here. And if we look at the Arctic index, the AO, and you can see how it got cold here a few days ago. Now we're climbing back up. It should be mild this week coming up. But you can see overall, we do have a cold threat throughout the month of December. And the middle 50% are on the colder side of this 0 degree line, meaning could be pretty cold in portions of the eastern and central United States. And we have some ensemble members that are all the way down at the bottom of the chart, more so than up at the positive. Now, the skill of the model does, as you would imagine, get less and less and less over time. But we're watching the trend here, and that trend does indicate after Thanksgiving a cold threat as we head into the month of December. So we're setting the framework up for what could be a pretty cold month of December. This is from Weather Bell, and you can see the temperature anomalies. They're going to be colder than average in the Northwest, interior parts of the West. The European sometimes gets this one wrong, but it indicates widespread chill across the prairies, across the Rockies, through the Great Lakes in particular, a few degrees below average, places like Wisconsin and Illinois and Iowa, and then even into the Northeast. It's going to be tough to find places that are running hot, except across the coastal Southeast, where we're still holding on to fall temperatures. And then across portions of the Hudson Bay, where we are likely to see some blocking ongoing, meaning that the cold air is blocked from moving east. It's got to come south. So this is contrary to La Nina. We are seeing a lot more cold coming right away, overtaking the La Nina, which would indicate more warmth across portions of the Southwest. So something to keep in mind. Now, the GFS looks a lot more like La Nina across the southern United States, but it has a very cold look to the Great Lakes and Northeast. So one of these models is going to be better than the other. I don't know which one. Right now, I think the GFS may have an upper hand on this, but we'll have to see. So anyway, you can see the cold is coming, and we are going to see a flip coming probably in the next couple of weeks. The wild card we have to watch for this winter, the Atlantic water temperatures. And you can see that water temps are quite cold over here across the areas of the Western Atlantic. And we see this often this time of the year, but colder than they have been over recent years. And forecast values don't exactly warm this up. So the longer this area stays below average, the more likely that we see storms that come in this direction. That rain snow line shifts more to the right, meaning better chances for snow along the I-95 corridor cities, where many of you are probably watching from. And many of you are probably asking, when are we actually going to have a real winter again? It's been a while. This could also better our chances for wintry weather across New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and portions of Newfoundland. I wouldn't get too much of your hopes up across eastern Newfoundland. We get to a point where it just can't be too cold everywhere, but at least this portion of the eastern U.S., New England in particular, maybe interior parts of the Northeast, should be a little bit more excited to see something like this. Now, farther south and east, I wouldn't get super excited at this point. Now, the analogs do say that we do bounce back from this. This is from the World Climate Service. I calculated several different probabilities. I looked at indices. I looked at where ENSO is. I looked at the PDO. I looked at QBO. They said overall, forget the fact that the Earth has gotten warmer, at least over the last 150 years. I don't know where it's been over the last thousands of years, but looking at the trend, we are still going to be running warmer than that over the entirety of the December to March time frame. It may start cold and it may eventually get warmer, with the exception of the upper Midwest and portions of the Rockies, where we could get quite a bit of snow. In particular, the south central United States, Florida, the mid-Atlantic, even coastal portions of the eastern U.S. should be warmer than average. That's, if you looked at nothing else, that's what we would expect. The south and southwest will be drier and drier. That's not a good sign. It's warm and dry out there now. We don't need that, but unfortunately, that's what things could look like. This should be more promising, though, around the Great Lakes, upper Midwest, portions of lower Canada, and portions of Alaska and the Yukon Territory, Northwest Territory as well, and portions of Atlantic Canada. And for the drought outlook, the areas in brown are in a drought now. So the Southeast, New England, the Southwest, portions of Texas. The areas in yellow, though, are where things are forecast to, unfortunately, get worse and worse. So the Tampa Bay area, much of Louisiana and Texas that aren't yet in the drought now, the Piedmont region of the Southeast into Virginia, portions of Oklahoma, southern Arkansas. These areas are predicted to see drought developing. It's going to be tough to see drought get removed, but the Northwest expecting a wetter than average winter, and areas around the Great Lakes where it has been quite dry going back from August and on, Illinois over into southern Michigan, into western New York, are going to see some improvement. If we take a look here, we just looked at that. We look at sunshine. That's important. It says head to Florida for some vitamin D. Yes, there'll be above average sunshine in Texas and some of these areas. The confidence level on that is not super high. It's about moderate, but I took a look at the World Climate Service, clicked on all the areas, and the places that had the highest confidence of this forecast being correct were in Florida. That's where the models have the highest skill of this being right. So unlike the last couple of winters in Florida, this winter should be a pretty good one. So book those tickets now for Florida. You will thank me later. In the Great Lakes, the Northeast, upper Midwest, it's going to be grayer than average. It usually is gray, especially this time of the year, December, January. Then it gets better. Unfortunately, I think we're going to see lots of storms coming up into here, and we're not going to see a whole lot of sunshine in Michigan. So I hope you have a tanning bed, or I hope you've got a way to get to Florida, because you're going to need it. It'll be better for you to get some of that vitamin D. So that's what we're looking at as far as sunshine goes. Snowfall, that's what the rest of the video will talk about. During looking at the analogs, they're not very promising for most of the United States. They are promising for Canada and the Great Lakes, portions of the Mid-South, maybe the Mid-Atlantic and the Northwest. But I don't always believe the analogs, and I'm going to talk about why that is. I already have. The sudden stratospheric warming events, that cold is for real. And the colder the lakes get, the more that jet stream dips a little bit farther south, and then comes back up a little bit farther north. The more that cold air gets down, the more probability we have of seeing snow. And if you're in the blue area, it's looking better and better for you to have a decent winter. That includes the Chicagoland area. We just haven't had a lot of snow recently. That includes the I-70 corridor. I feel like we keep missing out winter after winter in places like Columbus, Ohio, Cincinnati, Indianapolis, Peoria, Champaign, Des Moines. We haven't had a lot of snow recently. Boston really hasn't gotten a lot of snow. We may get a chance at some redemption here. Now, farther south, when we get south and east of 95, it could be, unfortunately, more of the same. Places like New York City, South Jersey, Delmarva Peninsula, the Carolinas on down to the Mid-South. Notice south of this area brown, I don't have anything highlighted. I'm not expecting snow. Of course, you don't ever forecast snow on the Gulf Coast, and then once in 100 years, it happens like last year. I'd be crazy to forecast it. If it happens again, we would, yeah, that would be nuts. So if you're in the purple areas, so around Anchorage and northward, interior Northwest, northern tier of the United States, Calgary, Winnipeg, Regina, Saskatoon, over to Thunder Bay into northern lower Michigan. This is going to be a good winter for you, in my opinion. The ski area should do really well. Jackson Hole area. We should do pretty well across Northwest Colorado. Denver's a question mark, as it usually is. Denver doesn't get a lot of snow midwinter. You usually get it early and late. We'll have to see about that. Northern New England, Atlantic Canada, Quebec, Montreal. This should be a pretty good winter for you as well. I think we're going to see lots of storms, clippers that strengthen on the way out, lots of cold air in place for you. Eastern Newfoundland, not really sure at this point. We're going to go near average for the time being. It's not a typically snowy place, but we know we got snow, last week, so it certainly could still happen. West Coast, we're not expecting much snow until you get to I-5. Then we'll get a little bit of snow. Let's talk about the numbers here. The Southeast United States. Sorry for the ranges, but they're important because I live in Raleigh, and my part of Raleigh typically gets 1 to 2 inches. I have family members that are 20 miles north of me that get double every single time, just about. And that's how it works. So we're going to predict less than 3 inches around Raleigh and Wilmington, Columbia, South Carolina, Atlanta and Macon, Birmingham, basically the I-20 corridor over to just south of Dallas, San Angelo. I-10 corridor, not expecting snow at this time. Could it happen? Sure. Am I forecasting it? No. Florida, no snow for you. Sorry. Good luck. 3 to 6 inches, Dallas on northward, Shreveport up to maybe Little Rock, Tupelo, northern Alabama, northern Georgia, mountains in particular. We could see a little bit more than that. Upstate South Carolina. Charlotte could be right on that 3-inch line. North of you will get more. When you get up to the Triad, probably 3 to 6 inches. Winston-Salem, High Point, Greensboro, those areas, north of Raleigh as well. Northern tier, North Carolina. Outer Banks, a few inches. 7 to 14 around Asheville, Knoxville, Nashville, just north of Memphis. Could actually be a pretty decent winter over the northern portion of Middle Tennessee. We'll have to see on that. The mountains, of course, will get more. Northern Arkansas will get more than that. Oklahoma could see a fair amount of snow. Northeastern Oklahoma, Tulsa, Ponca City, those areas. The western portions of these states, I don't think we're going to see a lot. I have another slide that'll talk about the plains here in a little bit. But overall, not a particularly snowy winter across the South. We're talking about it being a pretty mild winter. It's tough. We did get a couple of decent storms last year, more than we've seen in a while. To replicate that for a second straight winter is going to be pretty difficult. Even though it's another La Nina, I'm just not expecting it. All right, the Northeast. Sorry, because of the map, it just doesn't look great, I know. So I'm going to walk you through it. Virginia Beach, we're looking at 3 to 6 inches. Richmond, about 6. Northern Virginia, DC, Baltimore, Philly area, 7 to 14 inches. Just north and west I-95, we'll take those numbers up to 10 to 20. Around Philly, about 10. Northwest suburbs, closer to 20, like Allentown. South Jersey, Delaware, I don't think this is a big winter for you. Again, I'm predicting below average numbers, probably close to a foot. When you get up to New York City, that's when the numbers start coming up. 10 to 20 inches in the 5 boroughs and Long Island. Connecticut, probably closer to 20 to 30 inches. The mountains in the Northwest will, of course, see more than that, but the valley area and the coast we're looking at closer to 20 inches. Same for Rhode Island. When you get to Massachusetts, these numbers come up quite a bit. 30 to 50 around Boston and the Cape, 40 to 60 west of there. Scranton, Nepa, Binghamton, 40 to 60, more in the mountains. Albany, New York, 60 to 80. State College, 40 to 60. Pittsburgh, 40 to 60. Charleston, West Virginia, 25 to 35. Buffalo, 80 to 120. There'll be some areas in the ski areas there that get over 200 inches, maybe up to 300 inches in the Tug Hill. 80 inches or so around Syracuse, 70 to 90 in Burlington. Big amounts across New Hampshire and Maine, I think. Portland, 70 to 90. Caribou, Prec Isle, 100 to 130. The mountains, of course, will get quite a bit more. In the Midwest, the UP of Michigan, 2 to 400. Yeah, that's a big range, but where you live will make all the difference. 1 to 200 in northern lower Michigan. Some spots could get more. 80 to 120 around Grand Rapids. 40 to 60 in Detroit. 60 to 90 around Cleveland. 35 to 45 outside the snow belts, Fort Wayne, those areas. Columbus, Indianapolis, 25 to 35. 15 to 25 around Louisville, Lexington, Evansville, St. Louis. Kansas City, 15 to 30. Omaha, closer to 30. Des Moines, 30, 45 maybe. Sioux Falls, 40 to 50. Twin Cities, quite a bit, maybe 70 to 90. North of Duluth, towards the border, 100 to 120. Green Bay, 60 to 80. Chicagoland, always tough to predict, you guys, because of the lake. 30 to 45, but north and west, you could see up to 60. That includes near Milwaukee. Madison could see quite a bit of snow as well. In the west and the high plains, Amarillo, those areas, only 6 to 12. Santa Fe, 20 to 40 inches, more in the mountains, of course. Flagstaff, 90 to 120, 60 to 90 here. I don't remember where that was for, near the Four Corners. Denver, 40 to 80. Of course, you have such a big area, 40 on the front range, 80 when you get up in the mountains, 60 to 80 in Casper, 40 to 60 in Rapid City, 50 to 70 around Bismarck, as well as Billings, Montana, 15 to 30 in Boise, 5 to 10 around Portland and Seattle. But the mountains could see quite a bit, 3 to 500 or more from basically I-80 on northward. And Alaska, I think it'll be a pretty big year around Anchorage, 100 to 120. Fairbanks, 60 to 90. Kodiak, Nome, 60 to 80. Juneau, 75 to 100. Again, 5 to 10 in Seattle. One other thing we need to address, and that is the threat of ice. I think there's a lot of cold air coming down. The southern jet is not going to be as active, but I do think there could be ice storms. We get them every winter. The area in pink is certainly at risk for that, starting in Oklahoma and then moving across the center of the country. The Ohio River in particular, I'm concerned about. This could transition into what could be a very wet start to spring, but we'll have to see. But for now, I am concerned about multiple ice storms across this area. It includes the Western Carolinas, Western Virginia, parts of West Virginia, southern and eastern PA once we get north and west of 95. I apologize, but I should include western and interior parts of New England. But I think the bigger threat here is going to be across the Ohio and Tennessee valleys into the Ozarks region as well. There's certainly going to be a threat for a couple of ice storms. It is a La Nina, but if La Nina dwindles, this threat could certainly go up more and more because other climate drivers may take over, and that is a risk that we just have to be prepared for. Outside this area, there certainly is that risk. I don't think the Gulf Coast has to worry about it too much this winter, but just be prepared even if you're not in the pink area. Farther north, I think it's going to be too cold a winter for us to worry about too much ice. Places like Chicago, Des Moines, Detroit, I think snow is going to be prevalent this winter. So that's what we're going to close out the video with. We spent half an hour talking about it. I'll have more updates throughout the season. I appreciate it if you all would subscribe if you haven't already, and that will give you the latest and greatest here. I want to close out this video like I do, and that is by giving all the credit where it is due, and that is to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I am a Christian. I give all the honor and glory to God. I believe he's put me on earth here to study the earth and to reveal his knowledge to me. Psalm 19:1 and 2 says, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament," that's the sky, "shows his handiwork. Day unto day utters speech, and night unto night reveals knowledge." And God has given us all some knowledge here. The great part about being a meteorologist is it's a gift God has given me. God has given us each a gift, and that is a special thing. I don't think we were just created out of dust. I find it very difficult to believe that even though I realize that science and logic don't always go hand in hand with faith. But I truly believe that all of the great people of faith truly believe that because God created each and every one of us, he has given us the knowledge to be able to study and be good stewards of the earth. So I appreciate you joining me here on this afternoon, and I hope to be back again soon with more and more updates. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening. God bless you.